So it is August 25th, 2020. I think it's 7:45. I'm here in Chilliwack at a little cabin. What's it called? I don't know. Little cabin though on the lagoon. It's this tiny little lagoon. The cabin's in the middle of nowhere. We have a wood burning fireplace, and that's it, and a bed. I've been coming here for about 5 years now, and I come out here and I sit here and I work with plant medicines, specifically mushrooms. I've only ever worked with mushrooms here, and yeah, so I've just set up, got my firewood, I got all my stuff organized, got my food organized. I've got little I put these little crystals everywhere, and it always makes me feel really cozy. In essence, what I'm trying to create is a really safe space. That's always the main initiative, especially when you come out to somewhere on your own. Feeling really safe when you go into the higher doses. I don't know how much I'm going to do tonight, but this year's interesting. So we're in the midst of COVID-19 right now. I thought it'd be a good idea to start filming my journey, I guess. I don't know if this video is going to go online or if it's I'm just going to keep it so that I can watch it one day and see where I used to be. But I've learned a lot with the mushrooms, and this time is interesting actually, because usually I come out here and I've got these deep intentions, and I'm like, I think the first year at least when I used to come out here a lot in my first year, 5 years ago. It was 2016 when I started. Oh, yeah. And I used to come with these big intentions, like unconditional love, like I want to learn about unconditional, and I had all these, I guess, this deep vision of where I wanted to go. And it's interesting this year, like I'm practicing, according to my Taoist philosophy, I'm in my spiritual year. So your spiritual year is in essence, is a year of non-action, non-decision, which are not my strong suit, things I struggle with, which is why it's important for me to come out here and be alone. Otherwise, my extroverted nature will just take me off to chatterbox about myself and basically avoid the stillness, avoid some of the things that the deeper questions, the inner work. And yeah, so I'm here today, and I'll be here for 3 days. I'm gonna do 2 ceremonies, and try and just sit. I haven't brought any reading material this time. I'm gonna really try not to listen to music as much as I can, and yeah, I'm gonna see where it goes, I guess. Yeah, I've been really trying to let an intention come to me, and nothing's really come up this time around, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'll be a more open receiver based on that. But I'm not sure. I've got a really cool Om chant that's just really beautiful at I forget the frequency, but it chants at different frequencies, and I guess maybe that elicits something different. But I feel like it'll take me into hopefully a really deep meditation if I put that on later in the evening. And yeah, what else? You know what I feel? I feel like it's like I'm not doing anything. I've got this inner program of always needing to do things, and it's so hard to change that program. This feeling of anxiety arises in me when I feel like I'm not doing enough. And how are you supposed to find peace in life if you always have to do things? And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned about myself this year, is just I've got a very strong personality. I've got not in the wrong context here, but a big ego, a big character. And I'm always doing things to reinforce and validate this character, the one we call Brad. And there's nothing wrong with that. The ego gets a bad rap a lot, but it's I have all this subconscious stuff that I'm starting to notice now, of how much I try and reinforce that side of me, the personality, and it's hard to turn it off. It's hard for me to not set goals. I know that sounds a little strange, maybe because in our society that's like kind of that would be looked at as probably a good thing, someone who sets and achieves goals. And I think it's definitely got its place, and it's pretty much earned me everything I've ever, it's cool being able to, like, say I'm going to start this thing and then do it, or say I want to, whatever, I'm really into rock climbing right now, I want to climb this thing and then I go do it. And that's this reinforcing pattern of validation within myself, but also, like, other people see that and it gets validated through, like, social structures. But it's like, it's hard to, when trying to turn that off and still feel a sense of deep self-worth and unconditional love, that's the part that I've become really aware of in the last 12 months. And maybe that's why it's good to not have an intention this time. I'm noticing, I guess, right now is just, I guess, we'll see what comes up. In the morning, maybe I'll do another log on here to explain, I guess, what arises. And this is my first time really documenting, actually, before I do a mushroom ceremony. I don't know why I've been resistant to doing it. I don't know why, but I've been resistant to wanting to do this. I think I felt like I should start doing this a couple of years ago, but I didn't. So, if anything though, hopefully this will help me clarify by actually, like, speaking back to the camera the way I am, to help document this wild, weird experiences that I seem to go on. Yeah. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about my current procedure. So what I usually do is I'll get everything set up, and I've got my little kind of mesa. It's got my little Buddha statue. I bring him everywhere. I've got my 4 rocks: forgiveness, peace, love, and wisdom. And then I arrange them in, depending on what's going on within me, I'll arrange them in order, with 1 at the front, which is the gatekeeper to accessing the rest of them. And it always kind of changes. And then I'll smudge the room with sage, and there's incense burning right now, and I'll try and set the tone as much as I can to make it feel like, I guess the word's spiritual. I don't know. It's good to have rituals though. Definitely helps me. That's kind of what I've been doing for a few years now. That's the system I use. And yeah, what time? It's 7:45 right now, so I'll probably start ceremony at 8:30, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think I'm gonna do an hour of music at the start, and then I'm gonna try and just sit and do meditation and see what comes up. Wish me luck. You're safe. Supported. I trust the divine. Good morning. Tell me a win, insight, or learning that you've had. learning, lots of learning. So I'll just walk you through the ceremony. So this is day 3 of the ceremony. On the first night I did 3.5 grams, and last night I did 6 grams of mushrooms, and it was very profound. It was very clear what I need to do and where the next stage of my life is. I'll just start by walking. I'm gonna walk myself through here what happened. So I started this ceremony. I didn't do music for the entire start of it. I started off. I did the ingestion just as sun was coming down, and then I went into a meditation, and I just sat with my altar and did meditation for about an hour. It took about an hour to come on, and by that time, as it was coming on, it was pitch black out, and I had my blindfold on, and the experience was very visual, and it was very visual, and it wanted to pull me out into visuals and distract me. And it's like every time if I would let it, I'd go into a visual, and it's like a microscope. As soon as you zoom in on like the intricacies of some of the geometry of these visuals, it would expand deeper. And it's kind of like the universe, I guess. Like as soon as you zoom further into something, it would just expand again. And it was a lot. So what ended up happening is you come back to your breath. So I've been in these situations many times, and this time was very unique though, because it was 6 grams is quite a bit that's quite a lot of mushrooms, and it can be very stimulating and very overwhelming. And what ended up happening is I came deep into my breath, and I started doing these really just following the breath up through my entire central channel. And that just is, and what it ended up being what I was doing for a couple hours. Hours is that's what I was doing, and I just followed the breath. And what was really beautiful is I started to get into rhythm with how I breathe, and how invigorating and energized the oxygen is, or the air, or whatever's in it is paying attention to the breath. So I became very clear and aware of how little focus I put to my breathing in daily life. I don't think I've ever... I think it's because I recently went to a breath workshop, but we never really talked about the philosophy of breath work. And I'll continue to explain, but to keep it short, my next stage of life, I want to move into breath, and the study of breath and air, and it's your central life force. And I've never even given it second thought, because it's such a natural instinct for human beings and for all organisms. But it is the life force that is the most important out of everything, right? You can go days without water, you can go weeks, months even, without food, but the oxygen, there's something in the oxygen or the air and the breath that is what actually fuels the organism, and it's actually what fuels all organisms, right? And as you start to pay attention to it, you can start getting into a relationship with how your breath is in movement and relationship with the other organisms that you're working with all the time. So the first part of the ceremony, I was just in silent meditation in the dark, moving through with the breath. And I was kind of paying attention to where it is within the body, and starting to work with it, how to disperse it throughout the body, and provide the life force to all the different areas of the body. And I noticed my posture was improving as I was doing it. The deeper you're breathing, your posture almost forces itself into a deeper alignment, and it is fascinating. And I got up this morning, and it just wanted to breathe. Like, it's just, and like probably the second half of the night, I started to like get into a rhythm of like the intentionality of your breath, and like, because you're absorbing everything in the air. Like, that's what's going on. Like, the oxygen, the air is being absorbed into the organism, which is what you are. And so, and then as you're breathing in and out, that in itself is healing all the time. You're bringing in wellness and health, and you're moving out intentions and toxins, if you, depending on what you're doing, I guess. So as I started to move through the night, I was starting to breathe and walk around the room, and I was breathing out intentions into, like, and purifying through the night. Like, I'm breathing in, and I like breathing out good intentions, and keeping the entire presence and the whole consciousness centered in the breath, and starting to develop that relationship of who you really are, in a sense. Like, the Western world in general, and just myself looking at how I operate in the world, we operate from a thinking mind all the time. We're identified with the thinking mind, and you can almost, I mean, that's kind of how I relate to what the ego is. The ego is, to me, is just the thought forms that make up the personality or the identification of how you identify with the surrounding world, right? You have a bundle of concepts that you've attached to, and you maneuver from that position of consciousness and identify with things. And from there, your thoughts can drive you. A lot of your beliefs and everything is coming from that identification with your ego. And most of the world is just actually trying to develop that side of them, the thought forms. But when I was working with my breath, it's like I wasn't thinking at all, and I'm starting to come into a more, or not more, it's like at your nature, like what is really making up the organism. You start identifying to the breath, to the actual life force that makes any of this possible. And it's happening for all the trees. So even me, as like, it's like I felt like I was diving into my purpose almost. It's like, I am the breath. That's my true nature. And like, the mind is part of your nature for sure. But it is the part of you that causes all the problems in your life, because it's the part of you that thinks about past and future and who I am as a concept and identity. But when you start to move away from the identification with that side, it basically forces you into presence, because you've become in relationship with another part of your nature, and I would argue the more important part of your nature, which is the actual life force that makes all of it possible. You're getting closer to who you really are, which is the inner network of the organism, and how it functions and how it feeds itself, and how it actually contributes back into the other organisms, right? So I was actually sitting, I walked out, and I actually came up to a tree for a while to just breathe with it. I was like breathing good intentions over to it, because the carbon dioxide, or whatever it is, the trees breathe out of what I breathe. So we're working in relationship together. It's a part of me, and I'm a part of it. And it's an expansion. It's an expansion of abundance, because if I am the breath, then everything else is the breath too, because it relies on it the same as I do. It is the great abundance. It's everywhere. It's invisible, but it's right in front of me right now. It's this life force that's surrounding us. So being conscious with it, like you could even like take a pocket, and it's like, and then purifying it within your own body. It's changing the chemistry of that breath, and sending it back out into the greater organism. So it was beautiful. Like I did that all night. That's all I did all night, basically. That's not true. I did it for most of the night, and then at the end of the night, I was very happy, and I went into and then I went into music, and I have a huge player, and I put my music in, and I listened to some beautiful songs, and I did a bunch of ecstatic dance with my blindfold on, and I was just moving. But because I had done probably 2 or 3 hours of just like deep breath work, just breathing and deep consciously breathing, and just like my mind didn't get in the way at all, no thinking, and I was free basically because there's no restraints then, and I was just breathing deeply, and I was using my breath with my dance, and that is not what I thought my ceremony was going to be about at all. But it started in the first night where I did a little bit of it, and I did a little bit of music, and I did just some basic meditation, which is still centered in breath, but the consciousness of the breath was not nearly as strong. And now it looks like I'm going to be going into breath work for what I want to do for the next stage of my life, is to dive into these practices and start to. What did I write? I wrote some fun stuff, actually. I did journal a little at the end of the night. I'll read what I wrote, some of the things I wrote. Well, I wrote that I wanted to, other than doing these videos for documenting what's going on, I was instructed by the higher powers, the mushroom, whatever, the universe, it said, move away from identification with the ego and learn to identify with the winds, which is a really neat way to phrase it, I thought. But learn to build your identification with something that is actually in abundance. Which is difficult because the ego is always acting from scarcity, trying to build itself up. It's like, in my case, it's Brad Samuels, right? And it's his story. And the ego is always trying to reshape it and trying to make it more, to like become more. But the feeling is that with the identification with the winds or the breath is that it truly is abundant. It's endless. And as you start to identify with it, you're becoming in relationship with that which is within you, but it's also right around you. So you are expanding, if that makes sense. You have to experience, but it's within you. All of the oxygen, the air that makes the whole party work, the whole organism is just everywhere. And so it starts to blur the line of this organism and the organisms that are providing the life force everywhere, which is the trees, all nature, all of like flowers and plants. They're all providing the life force. They're your brothers, your sisters. You wouldn't call them brothers and sisters, but they're your fellow organisms. They're a part of you. Anyway, I can keep going on and on about it, but that's what's in my heart. What I just said, that's what's in my heart, is I want to, and it helps me practice. This is going to help me practice my stillness. So I'm in my year of spirituality, according to my Taoist charts, and I guess this is the gift. Because this made me feel so peaceful, so still, because the breath is always now, and the now is peaceful. Most your problems aren't now. They're always in the past or the future, generally, right? They're in the thinking. But yeah, it instructed me to kind of step away from using words as much and don't talk as much and start to communicate through the breath. Because you can even add intentions to it. It's like you're breathing in, you're purifying, and then you can add intentions out into the world through it, because it is communicating information. That's what when you're breathing. That's what the organism is doing. It's bringing in information for healing and for growth and that's what you're doing when you eat food even. It's when you eat a banana, your body is taking the information from that piece of biology and it's replicating the information in order to use it within the organism and strengthen it. But it's duplicating and it's transmuting it. And it's the same with the air and the breath. It's taking the information. So different air in the surrounding areas, it must have different information. And I'm sure, I understand, I have studied the power of intention. And if you're breathing in better intentions, and then you are distributing better intentions through your breath, you are doing a great service to the world, basically, in a small way, but it's abundant because you're doing it all the time. You want to be adding good intentions to breath. So it matters how pure you are inside. Another thing I wrote is to be a healing vessel yourself through the breath, purifying the air and send it back out to heal all the other organisms. So it made me think of like what's going on in the world right now, because right now COVID-19 is going on in the world. So it's very interesting that I had this experience, which is very contrary to like wearing a mask and doing a lot of that stuff, because how are you going to breathe deeply and focus on the expansion and all those things if you're wearing a mask? That's not good. And the main reason would be, and speaking of intentions too, is if you are in a state of fear and there's fear within the organism, those intentions are also getting sent back out through the air, through the breath. So it's very important that all of us, I guess, individually start to take responsibility for our own wellness, our own health, because if you are living in a state of fear, it is important that you start to cultivate the inner life force and start purifying this virus to strengthen the organism. I heard this a while back from a guy named Matthias, who I've watched him, and he's a spiritual teacher, and he speaks about viruses and how that they're a gift from nature to help strengthen the consciousness, to strengthen the organism. But it needs to be integrated. That's the essence of it, is that it does need to be integrated. And if you're not strong enough to integrate and purify the virus through the organism, then yeah, it could kill you. So it does take, you do need to step out of the fear and start to want to integrate and purify the oxygen, the air, the intentions that are in the greater atmosphere. So if everybody's going around and breathing all day and everyone's in fear, that's not good, because I'm totally basing this on intuition from my experience last night, but like, you're breathing out these intentions of fear that goes into the oxygen field, the air field, which is now these intentions. And maybe you do or don't believe in that, but I certainly do. And I've seen how intentions work in the universe and the power of will, and like, it matters. You can feel it. It's in the air, and you're breathing that in. So if you're in fear and I'm in fear, you're breathing out fear, and then I'm taking it in and I'm breathing more fear. It's not great, right? So what I would like to do myself is to really integrate this. I want to start to pay attention more to my world of breath and transmuting that energy, transmuting it for healing, and then sending it back out to heal others. It's quite the journey. It's quite the it's quite the journey. I'll tell you that. So I have someone that I met recently, and I'm going to be engaging him to teach me to move into a life of breath work. Essentially, I would like to follow a path of a cool name title that came. So I want to teach this. I've only had one class so far, which was last night or this weekend, last 3 days. But I do want to go into teaching this, and I know someone who is a teacher right now, so I'm going to get him to become a student of his, and ultimately I want to move into teaching breathwork myself. And that's interesting. That's not what I thought I was going to do. I mean, I'm still going to just rock climb and do all that stuff too, but I want to teach breathwork, which is very... I'm excited by it because I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I really didn't know what this ceremony was going to be about. So it's kind of neat coming in here with no deep intention and truly being in a place of just surrendering to like what the universe and the psilocybin thinks is right for me, for my next step. But I even came up with a name for the course. It's going to be it's called The Journey from Ego to Spirit. And it is a journey, but it's the movement away from your consciousness being absorbed by the egocentric side of things, like the personality and developing your character, and moving more into like the wind's energy, like moving in your consciousness and your identification, changing it over to the abundance of nature, which is what you are. And it's a practice, and it is a journey, and I'm definitely at the beginning of the journey. And I feel like I've learned a lot in 3 days about that journey, but it feels right. It feels right. That's what's in my heart. Yeah.